his thing. Okay, yeah, we should be live. Alrighty. Yeah, it looks good. What's up, bro? We doing good, man. How we living, baby? Game should be started in like 10 minutes. Appreciate that, man. Good to know that you've watched that stuff. The urge to get like a bullet game right now until the game starts is there. All right, cool. Let's see. I think Bach's doing pretty well in the tournament so far. He's third in the standing, only half a point out from first. So he's actually putting up a pretty good performance. His opponent is also putting up a pretty good performance. All right. What I think I'm going to do, I'm going to get a quick puzzle rush. I know you guys normally watch Bach played some pretty strong chess, but the game started in about 7-8 minutes with the board delay. So I'm just going to get my own brain working a bit. Is it queen check? Can't tell if it's queen or bishop check. Nah. Ooh, that's a nice one. Bro, what? Okay, at least we got 30. All right, let's go back to the games. It should be starting in like a few minutes. Also, hold up. Can't leave the people on YouTube. Forgot we're also streaming on YouTube. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna pull that chat up as well.
Hi everyone.
Okay, solving a quick puzzle before the game starts. It's the first move that comes to mind. Rook d7, threaten mate. Yeah, but he has queen takes f2. Oh wait, no, he doesn't. The other rook guards that. So rook d7. Yep. So we go here, he has bishop here, and then mate. There's also bishop f1. Then that lets him sack though. So king here. But then there's rook takes here. So there's bishop f1. He sacks. Yep. Take, take. Okay, not that hard. Looks like, all right, Bach's not at the board yet. He's pulling a Magnus, being fashionably late. let's go back. Let's start having brain rot. And instead, let's go back to the game. Game should be starting any minute now. Bach looking fresh with the low taper fade, bro. Got the low taper. What's Bach's score? It's he's at 3.5 out of 5, so he's doing pretty well. He's yeah, currently a half a point outside of the lead. So if he can get a win here, he should be in very good shape. He has the white pieces. He had a very nice game yesterday against Miaoyi Liu. Or not yesterday, but 2 days ago. There was a rest day yesterday. But yeah, his game was very impressive from the last round against the up-and-coming junior girl who's very, very strong. Okay. I'm not going to lie, guys. When Bach was telling me about doing the commentary for his match, I told him, please play E4. Because I'm an E4 player. I want to see some E4. He said he wouldn't tell me what he would play. He did well with E4 earlier, but all right, we got C4 on the board. I'm not gonna... Wait, what? Why'd it go to a different game? Wait, what? Hold up. Okay. It's glitching a little bit. Okay, yeah. Based on the live footage, he did play C4. But, I don't know what happened to the board. Okay. Okay. For some reason, I'm not hearing the audio on the moves. I don't know if the chess.com events is glitching. Now I hear it. Okay. So now it basically transposed from a C4 opening into like a Queen's Gambit decline. So this is probably going to end up being a pretty theoretical opening where they're going to blitz out a lot of these moves, because this looks like a very mainline opening with the Queen's Gambit decline and an exchange. It looks like this has actually become more popular. In general, the main move hasn't been to trade on d5 and reactivate the bishop on this light square diagonal, but I've been seeing a lot of these recent games from this tournament from other players where everyone seems to be going into this one. But this is definitely a low risk line for white here. So Bach, it looks like he hasn't committed his knight to f3 to allow some sort of symmetrical, or not symmetrical, but allow him to pin his knight on f3 with bishop to g4. So he's purposely delaying this knight move to have a bit more of a flexible opening. And I do like that his opponent already created a hook by playing h6. So now he's also softened up the king side a little bit. Knight e2 instead of knight f3. And early exchange, I don't know if this is still theory. I'm not an expert in non-e4 openings, but I'm definitely the type of guy that would want to play bishop to g3 here and keep pieces on the board. Bishop takes e7, allowing exchanges this early with the white pieces just doesn't seem great. But bishop g3 looks like the more testing move. And I guess this knight, its plan is to reroute maybe to d6. Like bishop g3, knight d6. And then maybe... I mean, the knight on d6 in this pawn structure, and the Carlsbad pawn structure, is really good because it has clamps on both the e4 and c4 squares. So we see bishop g3. Okay. I'm curious what Bach's plan is with this knight on the less natural square e2 instead of f3. So we see knight d6, and okay, I'm assuming this is some sort of theory. All right. Okay. What I'm wondering about Bach's position is this knight on e2. I don't see a lot of impressive forward movement. Like you want to go to h5. I'm always inclined to just go for a kingside attack. I like to win as quickly as possible. So I always try to look at how to put the pieces in attacking position, but maybe you play it a bit slower. You just castle, you play rook c1, you bring the rook to the e file, maybe you push e4. I'm not sure. We could, I could plug these moves into Lee chess real quick. I know, he started with c4, and just see where the theory stops. So let me just see what we had here. Knight c3, d4. I think it was something like this. c6. c6, e3. h6, bishop h4. I think bishop e7 here. Yeah, bishop d3. Castle. Knight e2. So this is all theory. And here is this where we saw knight to e8. Bishop d3, castle, knight e2. Yeah, knight e8. So knight e8 is apparently the third move, according to the computer here. Knight h5 and rook e8, knight b to e7. These are all moves that masters have played, but knight e8 is still a move. Bishop g3. Seems to score actually very well for white here. But it does lead to a lot of draws. Bishop g3. Knight d6, and I think this is where we're at. So here it says the top moves are queen c2 and to castle, which is also what the computer's saying. It looks like castles has the highest win rate here. There's some Magnus game. So let's say if they castle, rook e8 activates on the e file, queen c2. Okay, yeah, so it looks like we're here for a slow maneuvering game. Could also check out what's going on in the Masters games while these guys think. What's the best matchup in the Masters section? Definitely Noterbeck and Gukesh. But they're only 6 moves in. I'm happy to see an Italian, though. It should get pretty sharp. Early A4. Okay. Noterbeck coming up with some serious prep. I think he's really motivated to beat Gukesh for obvious reasons. Early A4, A5, probably interesting. Okay. And it looks like Bach has played a move that was not in the Masters database, or at least not one of the top moves. Bishop F4. Let's see if this has been played at the high level. After knight d6, castle and queen c2 are the top moves, but bishop f4 has never been played, at least on the Lichess database. Let's check on the Lichess Masters database. And it's only been played one time. Okay, Faustino Oro played it. Okay, only been played one time on Lichess. So this is basically a novelty here with bishop f4. And I guess this is how... Does the knight want to go to g3? But I'm happy that Bach's playing some new stuff here. What would be the idea of bishop f4, though? I'm assuming... Yeah, let's go off Lichess. But I'm assuming the point is just to clear the path for knight g3. And the bishop looks a bit awkward, but any g5 gets hit with bishop e5. And it's not like your bishop is getting trapped, because you can always take this knight on d6. But it is awkward development with the bishop on f4, knight on g3. But if it works, it works. G4? You're saying an idea to play G4? Okay, I didn't really consider that one. I guess if you want to play very aggressive, but I mean right now G4 blunders a pawn. I guess you would have rook to G1 and then some bishop takes H6. It's a very aggressive way to play, but maybe G4 is an idea. It just seems a bit adventurous, but maybe. G4 would definitely make the commentary as exciting as possible. We can try to mess with these moves on Lichess. So let's say he goes like rook e8. I mean, hypothetically, let's say we put G4 on the board. The engine doesn't hate it. It's definitely a little bit better for black, but I mean, G4 is definitely an idea. It says it's only minus 0.4. Knight c4 hits the pawn. There's queen c2. There's also, engine says bishop b1 here. You could obviously take, but you don't want to give up the light squared bishop. Queen c2, you don't really want to put the queen behind the bishop, or else the battery is less effective. Bishop b1 is bishop h4. Queen here, threatening this. G6. So I guess what the engine's pointing out with g4 is that you can stop h4 with bishop to h4. And if you can't push the pawn to h4, then generating the kingside attack is a bit harder. But maybe Bach's idea is g4. Why not bishop takes g4? So I'm imagining... Yeah, so we can go ahead and look at bishop takes g4, but I think the point is just rook to g1. And now if the bishop moves somewhere, bishop takes h6 is possible. So like, let's say the bishop goes back to e6, immediately bishop takes h6, we have a pin. and we're already creating a serious attack. He could play this move h5 and defend, but then there's h3, forcing the bishop away. And here there is no pawn to capture on h6, but at least we opened up the g file. The bishop is awkwardly placed. You could play something like knight g3 and just start the attack. Maybe f3, bishop e2. It seems a bit unnecessary, but it's definitely a thing, though. So, yeah, we don't know if g4 is the idea. Or my first instinct and the safer option is just knight to g3. But just from an intuitive standpoint, black hasn't made... The only quote-unquote weakening move he's made is played h6, because it creates this hook of bishop takes h6 and also g4, g5. But other than that, his moves have been very solid, so lashing out with g4 right away, in theory, shouldn't just be winning the game, but it also doesn't look terrible. And what I'm seeing from looking at that brief engine analysis is that one of black's ideas is knight to c4, and it does sort of connect with this b2 pawn. And I don't know, you would much rather the bishop be on c2 and the queen on d3. Okay, but also the point of the knight on d6 is that it's supporting a bishop to block a potential battery on this light square diagonal. Yeah, queen c2, the benefit of queen c2 is that it prevents bishop to f5. So this does make sense, because the bishop doesn't have many good at developing squares except e6. But I do think that the opponent probably got caught out of preparation here. He played knight e8, which was already not the most common move, the third most common move, and now bishop g3, basically never seen before. So I actually like black likes Bach's chances here. I think he came out with a pretty decent option. And I like that he hasn't committed his king to the king side yet, so he still has ideas of maybe going crazy with g4, h4, and just launching the attack and punishing black for castling immediately. Computer's saying rook e8. Okay, he goes bishop f5. So he's punishing Bach, because one of the top computer moves was bishop to c2, or sorry, queen to c2 instead of bishop f4. And I guess the point was that it stopped this move, bishop f5. So how does Bach plan to deal with this? Because this sort of takes the wind out of your sails on if you were trying to go for an early checkmating attack, which I'm very partial and biased for. But the first thing we got to ask is bishop takes knight, removes the defender. He has to take on d3. We take on e7, attacking the queen. But then he throws in bishop takes e2, attacking our queen. We take on d8. They take on d1. Okay, hold on. So this might lead to a forcing variation with a lot of exchanges. And this is what the opponent was calculating. So it's basically forced. Bishop takes d6, removes the defender. So they have to take. Now we throw in bishop takes e7. We're currently up a piece attacking the queen. Now it's even material. Bishop takes e2. Both queens are on their attack. Bishop takes d8. Bishop takes d1. Material's equal, but we're up a tempo. And then it begs the question, do you just play rook takes d1, rook takes d8, and then that looks like they're going to shake hands? Or do you drop back instead and go bishop to a5? They come back. They can't go to a4. They come back bishop c2. It's hard to know what's going on here. So I'll go ahead and put these moves on lead chess, just so it's a bit easier to evaluate. So here we see bishop. Wait, it was bishop f4. Yeah, so he didn't play rook e8. He goes bishop here, defended by the knight. So the forcing variation is we take. They have to take, or else they're going to lose a piece. Now we play bishop takes e7. And now they're forced to take, because if you capture this, then we capture the bishop. We're up a piece. So bishop takes e2. Bishop takes d8. Bishop takes d1. It's hard to say that. The only thing white has is that they're up a move. They have the white pieces, they're up a tempo. But other than that, the position just looks super, super solid. And it's hard to say much is going on. Okay, bishop c7. I mean, they have so many retreating squares. Let's say bishop h5. Okay, f3, rook c1. I don't understand. It says it's plus 0.4. I guess you have a small initiative. But it doesn't look very convincing to me. Like, why is this not just equal? And the thing is that if you don't go into this line of bishop takes d6, then they just remove one of your best pieces, the light-scored bishop. He trades off his light-scored bishop, which is in theory his bad bishop, since he has this light-scored pawn chain. He would prefer to exchange the light-scored bishop, because our light-scored bishop's perfectly navigated against our pawn structure. And it's just more effective. And then after this trade, I don't see how we have any advantage here. Black should just be able to nicely develop. And I guess in this structure, white is a little bit better because the C file is more convenient than the E file, if I had to understand. I don't know. Why not bishop takes g4 for black? Oh, wait, no, that was an old comment. I see. Yeah, when we played g4. All right, let's see what's going on with Gukesh and Noterbeck. We saw this move a5, bishop d2, takes, castle, castle. Okay. Knight e7. Guess clears the path for something like this. c3. The drawback of moving the knight is that now we can maybe strike in the center with d4. Knight g6. e1, h6. We strike. Wow, knight h7. Potentially, I mean, this is illegal. There's a bishop here. What is knight h7? Why knight h7? I mean, do you want like knight g5? And then like takes, pawn takes, and then you get like knight f4? Knight h7, I don't really understand. Unless you want like king h8 and then f5. I like this position for Noterbeck though. The space on the queen side looks useful. And I mean, he has this knight f. Okay, maybe not actually. Because the knight having f4, and if you play g3, then the light squares with the light squared bishop just becomes very weak. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game, Noterbeck and Gukesh. I could see this becoming a big fight as the game develops. Wei Yi in Prague also looks like a good game. Okay. Looks relatively chill. I think Bach is still wondering about this move. I feel like if you prepare bishop to f4 and don't play queen c2, I mean, you're allowing bishop f5, so I feel like you must have looked at this potential option of bishop f5, but Engine says white's a little bit better after the mass exchange, but I mean, looks closer to a draw than anything. What would be another alternative than going into the mass exchange? I mean, you could take. It's not like this is ever gonna work. You don't really have an attack. I mean, once the light squared bishop comes off, you don't really have an attack. So this is really the best you can do. It's meaningless when the engine's on. I just don't see how this is not going to peter out into a draw with the mass exchanges. Yeah. I mean, Bach had to have looked at this, though. If here the top move is queen c2 to stop bishop f5, then when you play a sideline or like a pseudo novelty like bishop f4 and then you allow the move, you just have to have a follow up here. And yeah, I mean, the good thing about Bach's position is that it's very safe. There's very low risk, and he's 3.5 out of 5. I don't know. We'll see if he comes up with something here, though. But I'm pretty sure it has to go into this mass exchange. If you don't, then white traded off, or black successfully traded off his bad bishop for the good bishop that Bach has, and sort of neutralizes the advantage. Do I think Bach is as good as the engine? Okay, not sure what the point of that rhetorical question is. Wish.com Dubov? Yeah. I'm definitely budget Dubov in every way. Once I was actually at a club, like I live in Miami. Once a few years ago, I was like at a nightclub, the last place you would think about chess. And at this nightclub, some random dude was like, "Bro, you look like this Russian grandmaster. I don't know if you play chess, but you look like this guy Danil Dubov." And I was like, "What?" He didn't know that I'm like a chess nerd. But yeah, getting told I look like Dubov by a random person on by a random person out in the street was insane. Should have played along. Yeah, but I don't have the cadence of Daniil. I can't just be like, "Oh, but okay." I mean, I can't even. I'm not good at impressions anyway. I can do like the generic like Ivanchuk Kramnik type of impression, but yeah, I can't imitate Dubov. I can do muscle ups though. We both are pretty good at calisthenics. If you guys have seen his clip where he does, I can't do a one arm muscle up or a one arm pull up like him, but I can do some muscle ups. Yeah, so we go into this mass exchange, and let's see if Bach can use his first move advantage with white. Because literally all I see, at least from my weak understanding, is that, okay, we have the first move advantage in this exchange, and maybe the C file with this b4, a4, and then you go for the minority attack on the queen side, is probably a bit easier to play than fighting down the e file, because you can't really break apart this structure. So I think this is honestly why white is slightly better, is because after you play something like b4 and you stop c5, you can't really disrupt this pawn chain in the center, where the minority attack on the queen side gives you like an easier play to activate along the c file. So at least that's my understanding. For a much weaker player that does not play these queen's gambit declines with white, I don't know. Yeah, so if we make some moves on the board, I don't know, like if you take this is probably... The problem with this is that you wasted a tempo taking and then the rook goes to the c file. I don't know where you would move. Bishop h4. I'd probably move back bishop h4. They move back. You use the c file. They develop. maybe bishop g3 just to put the bishop on a better diagonal, and they go a5 to sort of stop your expansion. So if you do that, what if you play a move like b4? If you play a move like b4, apparently they can now use the c4 outpost. f3 seems weird to me because now you've softened up the f3 or the e3 square. Yeah, I do not know why it's plus 0.3. Someone needs to explain that to me. a5. Move the knight. Okay, but g5 doesn't make much sense to me. Yeah, I don't understand these positions. And I mean, if you just go for this exchange right now, I mean, you gotta shake hands, right? Do I think Magnus will be playing the World Championship? What do you mean by that? Like, will he try to join the candidates tournament and then qualify and then challenge Gukesh? I doubt it. I don't think he just has the right to skip the whole candidates process. Okay. Noterbeck's still thinking with this knight h7 move. It's a very interesting move by Gukesh. This knight on f4, or the potential of the knight on f4 does look pretty scary for Noterbeck. Because g3 just softening up the light squares doesn't look like the dream. Let's go back here. Play some music. I don't know if I mean, we can. If you guys want it, we can. Put on some like lo-fi beats or something. Okay, Noterbeck made a move. What the hell is rook e3? This is a wild move to me. Rook e3? It's one of the computer moves. What? Okay. What could the point of rook e3 be by Noterbeck? I mean, it's a computer move. This is such an unnatural time to lift the rook. What? All right, does someone want to explain rook e3 to me? Okay, yeah, Bach is still thinking about this exchange. Yeah, it's interesting to see how he'll try to fight for an advantage here. Because I don't understand the advantage. I'm too weak. But rook e3, I'm actually struggling at what it does. It's not like you have rook lift potential. I mean, it overprotects the only thing I see is that it like overprotects the knight after like knight f4 g3, but it's like the knight's already defended. I'm not sure. Someone's got to explain this one. There's got to be some sort of deep idea, though. How does Noterbet come up with Rook E3? What? Yeah, we'll look at the other games in the Master section. We already got a draw. These guys are tired of... What was this? We'll click through it. Yeah, it was just the Berlin. Yeah. Guess they were just a bit tired. They just wanted to wrap it up. Okay. It's a bit disappointing, but where are they in the standing? I mean, obviously, Argent's had a terrible tournament. Fabi, 3 out of 6. It's a bit lame, though. I guess they both at around 2,800. They didn't want one of another to farm each other for rating. I don't really know. Or they were just tired. This game looks pretty interesting. Okay, maybe not. I think the most interesting game, I mean, we haven't looked at all of them, is this Noterbet game. Check, yeah, Bach's still thinking. You got into chess, what should you learn? Yeah, it's less about like knowing any specific openings. It's more you just got to get your puzzles down, and you got to be able to freestyle in the opening with natural developing moves. Just get your pieces out, learn some puzzles, and then you sort of build it from there. Knowing lines and stuff is not necessary until you become until you start to know what works and doesn't just by freestyling. Okay, let's also check this Wei Yi game. Not that many moves, though. Okay, this makes sense, though. I like Prague's position. Pawn on c3 has a nice grip over the d4 pawn. Go like knight d2. And after like a trade here, you just have a nice grip over this square. The knight or bishop can go to this square. But overall, that looks relatively chill. I'm definitely going to stay on this this Noterbet game until someone can explain rook to e3 to me. Knight h7, rook e3. Yeah, I'm straight up can't understand rook e3. I mean, it's a move. It's not like it worsens your position, but the fact that it's one of the best moves is making no sense to me at all. The only thing it does is defend the knight, and it lets you play g3, but I still don't understand that. Okay. Okay, Bach made a little face there. I do not think he's happy. I mean, he can't be mad about this position. It's definitely solid, but I don't know. We can also check out some games from the other people in challengers because I still like some of the people in the challenger section. Like I'm a big fan of who Bach recently beat, Meowie Lu. I think she plays some very very entertaining chess. So I generally root for her unless she's playing Bach. Also Faustino. Faustino and Divya. This is a good matchup. Faustino comes up with the b5, which is I know is like one way to play against the ready. Should be two. Should be an interesting game. But yeah, we gotta check Meowie Lu. She's always cracked in a good way. Wow, they blitzed out 18 moves of theory, I guess. We're seeing a lot of these Berlins. This is like the fourth Berlin I've seen. This is wild, though. Yeah, it's one of those just Berlins you would see in the World Championship. The king's on c8. You have the bishop pair, though. Okay, let's go back here. But yeah, if anyone's also watching the live broadcast of like the Masters, let me know what they thought about this rook e3 move by Noterbeck, because that's still above my head. Do you have a thought on an underrated player? It's hard to say. I mean, I don't think I'm good enough to really make that type of determination on someone's strength. But I think Hans is still underrated. He's like has a very impressive rating of like 2330 something, but I think he's been playing at like a 2750 at least level. I think he'll hit 2750 once he starts playing some more classical tournaments. Not sure what Bach's thinking right now looking at him in the camera, looking very handsome. He's yeah, it's an interesting time to think after all the pieces get traded off. I guess it's really about what his plan in the middle game is, and it's not actually. I mean, it can go wrong pretty quickly. Like I made some random moves on the board, and then already black was a little bit better. So actually maintaining a decent position might not be super obvious. Like the engine was saying, eventually you go f3, and I guess you just put the king on d2 or f2. I guess d2. And I guess the pawn on f3 will restrict the knight, but it's not clear. Okay. Gukesh continues with the plan knight g5. And I guess with with the knight on g5, and if a knight comes to f4 and you play f3, I guess the rook on e3 is simply overprotecting the knight. I guess it really is that simple. Of just a prophylactic move protecting the knight before anything bad happens. Maybe an idea if they go knight f4 and you're sort of provoked to play g3, the bishop can always come back to f1 and like re-fianchetto itself to cover those newly weakened light squares after playing g3. It's not really what you want to do, though. Because you don't really want to play g3. You would rather like play h3. But if you go h3 here, then that makes playing g3, like, how do you stop the knight coming to f4? All right, I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. Then boxing the tank here. Yeah, it's not like a draw would be bad for Bach. He just played such a creative, wild game against Miaoyi Liu. Kind of wanted to see the same energy. But he picked a line that has very little risk. I'm pretty sure it's like, it wasn't the same line like on move like 7 or 8, but similar line to what Fedoseev played against Fabi. Like this Queen's Gambit decline with limited risk, and then he ended up winning in the endgame in very technical fashion. So maybe Bach can come out, can channel his inner Vladimir Fedoseev and show some technical class here, but it's way above my level. I do not know how you would fight correctly in this position. This is really where my chess is a bit weaker. I can put some pieces on the board, but mainly if it's about the initiative, going for the attack, just checkmating the king. When it sort of dries out like this, and you have to convert a small like advantage, like a slightly better pawn structure, I don't really understand. That's when I would need Bach to coach me on how to play this, but Has Bach coached you? Nah. I would definitely take a lesson from Bach, though. I play very one-dimensional chess, just know a lot of preparation with the engine and just go for the attack. More Daniil Dubov comments. Yeah. I wonder if Dubov and I like share some DNA, man. You never know. Okay, Bucks now taking a lot of time here. Oh, thank you, Phoebe, for the raid of 144. Thank you so much to Phoebe. Yeah, we're just watching Bach. Oh, wait. No, that was not a move. That was a move on Noterbeck's game he decided to take. But yeah, we're in a spicy little early endgame that might happen. But thank you so much for the raid. I appreciate that. I know, yeah, Phoebe, I know you've been playing some over the board yourself. I don't know how that's been going, but hopefully it's been going well. Okay, Noterbeck takes. And I don't know if Gukesh's idea was queen takes or to go like pawn takes and make it a little bit more spicy. But queen takes, knight f3. The queen drops back somewhere. G takes doesn't look that impressive. The only thing it does is bolster knight on f4, but you just play g3. So, not sure. I think he'll take with the queen. But taking with the queen, knight takes, and then queen takes, it feels like that's not super impressive for black. White, I feel like, has really good chances in this game due to the fact that he already got his pawn to a5. It's already not clear how to actually deal with this. Because if the pawn ever goes to a6, then it could be pretty weak. Thank you, Phoebe. Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Okay. Yeah, he takes back with the queen. I'm imagining, knight f3 looks pretty obvious here. Oh, he goes g3. You could also get weird with rook g3, but that looks artificial more than anything else. He decides g3, I guess, first, and he'll probably play knight f3 after. But this does seem pretty solid for white now. The knight is now misplaced on g3. Or on g6, excuse me. The bishop might just reroute to f1. And I think he's just going to play on some queenside expansion. And also the better control over the center. At some point, there'll be bishop h3, but you can meet that bishop f1. Knight f3. Yeah. Oh, finally we have some moves here. Yeah, so we go bishop h4. That's the most natural move. Yeah, and I still... This looks low risk for Bach, though. I mean, I would mess it up. I don't know if he'd mess it up. A draw is definitely still decent, 4 out of 6. But with the white pieces, you would want to be pretty ambitious here if your goal is to try to win the whole event. Yeah, box in the challenger section. G3. All right, let's check some other games out as his opponent mulls that over. Box game's gonna get interesting after he picks which square to retreat his bishop, and then what the next like 3 or 4 moves after the bishop like returns to h5 or c2 or something is how to actually like play this position. Like rook c1's an easy move, but other than rook c1, what to do with the king, what to do with the pawns is not super obvious to me. Okay. Yeah, this one looks like it's going to be some Berlin draw. Vaishali. What the hell was this? Take, 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 take. Desperado, take. Pretty similar to box game with the early queen exchange, and then you don't really know what's going on. Looks like a London. Okay. If you guys have a game you want me to check out, just let me know. There's a lot of options. I'm gonna stick with this Noterbag game and the Bach game. It's good though that Bach's opponent's also thinking. It's not like he has this whole thing planned out. I think he just saw he could force all of the exchanges in a relatively solid position, and then they'll figure it out. I think this is still a 3-result game. Both players could definitely mess this up. What's up, John? Yeah, we throw some moves. So Bach went bishop h4. The most natural move is just copy Bach with bishop h5. Rook c1 looks like an obvious move to me. Rook e8, knight d7 looks obvious. This a5 move also makes sense to prevent Bach from going for a minority attack, but like knight d7. There's so many different ways you could go about this and go wrong. Yeah, so he goes bishop h5, the move we expected. I feel like rook c1 is going to come by Bach. I mean, it's rook c1 comes to mind to me because it's the most flexible move. Because I don't know if I want to go here, if I want to go here, if I want to go here. Rook c1 is at least the move I know I want to play. And the engine is liking this move f3. And then you can just support the center pawn with a rook on the e file and the king on d2. And because it's on a dark square, it's not really a target. And I guess the bishop can just always go to f4 as well. So he goes king d2. I guess this is another move, another flexible move to connect the rooks before you go rook c1 or rook e1. Okay, king d2, probably knight d7 here. You would never consider king d2? Well, you don't really castle in this position because it's already an early endgame. The queens have already come off. So if you castle, now your king is far away from the action on g1. At this point, you're never worried about your king getting checkmated with only the rooks, knight, and bishop with the perfect pawn structure. So you definitely want the king in the center so it can join the game, because once the queens come off, the king can become an attacking piece after like the endgame progresses a bit later. And it also needs to defend things. Like the engine wants you to play f3, the king defends the e3 pawn. Castles is way yeah, you're just putting the king too far away. So king d2, pretty natural move, I think. Connects the rooks. Yeah, knight d7. So these were like the obvious moves. Okay, knight a4 right away. So Bach already has his plan. So I'm trying to understand Bach's idea here. He goes knight a4. I mean, if you ever go b5 and chase him back, then I feel like you just return to c3, and now you have a new target with rook c1, and now the c6 pawn is going to be a liability later on. The computer, for some reason, points out b5 as one of the moves. But that just looks... I do not understand this computer move b5 and creating yourself a target here. Yeah, so he doesn't do that. He goes rook e8 like a normal person. Imagine Bach is just going to play rook c1 and at some point try to get a knight onto the c5 square. And I think, yeah, like, he basically has a, like, I play the Carl with black. If we flip the board and we pretend Bach has black, it's sort of like a Carl pawn structure in reverse, which is known to be pretty good in the endgame. Because you get the minority attack, you get the rook on the c file. And yeah, I mean, it's harder. I mean, he can't really break apart Bach's chain at all in a reasonable way. Engine is pointing out rook h to c1 and keeping this rook on the a file. Maybe when there's some b4, a4 expansion, both rooks want to be on the queen side. But if you go rook h to c1, then you're never really playing this move f3, I don't think. I mean, I guess you still could and go like bishop f2. But it looks like you do want the option of maybe a rook coming to e1 while the other rook goes to c1. But okay, I like this knight a4 by Bach, though. Because b5's trolling. And it really just restricts this knight. If the knight ever goes here, you just take it, probably. And go for the pawn structure. So if the knight... Yeah, you're really just stopping the knight's forward movement. Okay, let's see. Check this game out. Finally, we have a Sicilian. Everyone's been playing the Berlin today. Take. Okay, probably just rook a to d1 here. Go after the pawn. Looks better for white. Faustino's game. This game's definitely going to heat up at some point. Let's go back here. Okay. So let's put some moves on the board. Let's say, yeah, he didn't go rook c1. He went king d2, knight d7, knight a4, rook e8. So rook a to c1 comes to mind to me. I don't really understand rook hc1 as much. Let's say rook ac1. I mean, here if you go knight b6, you don't really want to take. This feels like black's able to mobilize on the a file. And eventually this pawn can push forward. I was wondering about knight b6. You want to go here, but then immediately there's knight check. So maybe Bach might consider a move like pawn to b3 here. So I think b3 does make some sense, because after knight b, it sort of just prevents knight to b6. Because now we can go knight c5, and now the knight is stuck here. So he won't go knight b6 if you go b3. So I think b3, based on just that, I think I like b3 the most here. Anytime, yeah, rook 8, also this rook to c1, knight b6. Engine says go b3 here, but I mean, visually, why are we doubling the pawns? I guess engine, okay. I would never think about doubling the pawns here, but I guess you do get a lot of pressure, and you can use the doubled pawns. But that does seem, that would be impressive if Bach went into that. So my prediction is he's going to go b3 here. Because he sees that his knight can't go to c5, his knight can't go to f6, will take it. So knight b6 is really the only option. So b3 remedies that. Let's see if he plays it. After b3, the engine points out b5. I would maybe consider knight b2 here to maybe go to d3, and then this is now a target. Something like this. I like white's position here. So I think white is a little bit better with b3, even though engine says it's equal. Because I really don't see, I don't know, I do not see someone playing b5. I mean, maybe. I guess if b3, you go b5, because you don't want rook ac1 and knight c5 to happen where you can take back with the rook. So maybe b5 is simply necessary to stop knight c5, rook takes c5. Look, if you go rook c1 and they don't go, I mean, knight b6 just looks like a good move, though. I mean, obviously you can throw in g5. That doesn't really change anything. I guess you can go g5 and now, I mean, it's not like the knight wants to go to f6. We just play f3. We also go knight c5. So the knight really wants to go to b6. f6 maybe. So, yeah, to me, b3 looks like Bach's best chance. Okay, note her back. Whoa. Wild. The top computer move, h4, counterattacking the queen, which is pretty crazy stuff. h4, queen h5, f3. Queen e2. This is going to get interesting. I mean, there's queen b3 here. But you would like to eventually push b4, so queen b3 gets in the way of playing b4. Queen b3 also just like defends the pawn, and then the queen is sort of sidelined on b3. Bishop e2 is possible, but it doesn't look super impressive. Although maybe it is if they take. We can go like rook f1, f4. h4 is crazy to me, though. I mean, h4 if takes should be fine. Oh, and of course Noterbeck plays the best move, h4. Dude, this dude Noterbeck is goated, man. I'm hoping he becomes world champion. So queen h5 looks like the move to me. Keep the queens on. White sort of weakened his position. f3. It's going to get pretty dank, this game. And with Bach kind of getting under some time pressure, I gotta say. So bishop takes d1, bishop pawn takes here. Bishop comes back. Throw in f3. Bishop goes back. Yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to evaluate this. We're seeing a lot of these this is the third like queen exchange early that we've seen. This game, Bach's game, and also Vaishali's game. Damn, every single game is level though. Masters, Challengers, there's no game that really has much of an edge. Other than, I guess, maybe Noterbeck is slightly better, but even that's unclear. So we see queen h5. I mean, now there are a lot of options. Engine points out f3, which looks aggressive. Then there's also just moving the queen somewhere. This also kind of prepares f3. So I think there's this idea of like f3, queen e1, then push all of the pieces back, and the queen defends this h4 square, but you need it where the knight and the queen aren't connecting on h4. But if Noterbeck can somehow play f3, g4, push all the pieces back while this h4 pawn's defended, then the pawn storm on the king side looks like it could become pretty dangerous. And all of a sudden that rook on e3 has like some life swinging into the position. Okay. What is this? Okay, he plays bishop g3 prophylactically. At some point, black had to move g5 at any moment. So I guess Bach just plays bishop g3 just so this doesn't come with tempo later in the game. Another reasonable move, bishop g6. And again, I am a fan of this b3 move, but it's not obvious to somewhat prevent. No, yeah, it definitely just prevents knight to b6, b3. And with Noterbeck, bishop e2 here. Now, well, bishop e2 essentially forces the trade of bishop and queen. Yeah, no, bishop e2 doesn't look right here. Because, I mean, yes, it's a trade, but you just don't have much of an advantage there. Maybe you're a little bit better than knight's misplaced, but I think Noterbeck is looking for a bit more. And this idea of f3 with the idea of g4 later on does look pretty good, but you have to really prepare g4 because not only do you need the h4 pawn protected, but also you're re-allowing the knight to go to f4. So if you go f3... Also, I mean, the bishop hangs out on h3 as well. But at some point, there are some g4s where the bishop is hanging. So I think you just go f3 and you just maneuver your pieces. And then at some point, you always have this option of g4. And I guess if you go f3, the knight can't go to f3. But maybe the knight goes to f1 and then to h2. And that further supports some sort of g4. The rook comes in. You can get some weird attack down the line. Here I'm hoping Bach plays this b3 move. It's either b3 or it's a rook to the c file. Other than that, no move really makes... Yeah, I mean, it's literally the only moves. We'll put this on the board, though. Bishop g3, bishop g6. So if you go rook ac1... I mean, if you go knight b6 here... Knight c5, knight c4... King c3 looks a little too creative to me. I wouldn't allow that. I mean, you don't really want to trade and just give up the a file like that. It's not like the doubled pawns are really a weakness. The pawn can go to b5 if it ever gets targeted. Also, just doubling up. Here, black is never worse, I don't think. So let's hope Bach plays b3. If he plays b3, then I actually kind of... I could see why white is a bit better, for sure. His knight is just better placed than black's knight. Also, does anyone know what the time control is in this? I mean, it should say it here, but yeah, I actually don't know. Is it increment after every move? Okay, so it is 30-second increment every move, which makes it pretty chill. It's kind of impossible to flag. I like it better when there's no 30-second increment after move 40, like they had in the World Championship. That makes it a bit more fun. It's honestly a bit lame. It's too much time, I think. I do want Babak to make a move though. He's giving up a pretty serious time advantage here. I'm gonna go grab like a banana or something though, so I don't die. Okay. Hmm. I'm wondering how much Bach is looking into the position. As someone who doesn't calculate and visualize that far ahead and just plays more on intuition, I also don't play classical chess like at all. I don't understand like how far they're actually evaluating these positions. Because it's like in this position, you have two moves. It's either you put a rook on c1 or you push the b pawn to b3 or to b4. Like, let's say you went b4. Why is b4 so bad? I mean, they can undermine it like this is probably why it's bad. And then a3, takes. You sort of gave him the open a file. I mean, b4 is playable, but you have two options. It's either rook c1 or it's push the b pawn one or two squares. Okay, so he goes rook c1. He doesn't play b3. Happy he made a move though. So yeah, rook ac1, the most natural move. And now if knight b6, wonder what his idea is. Maybe he sees he has knight c5, and after knight c4, you just walk the king, go b3, and then come back, I guess. But b6, knight a6, rook here, b3. The knights sort of do a little dance on the side of the board. The king comes back. I guess this takes some visual understanding. His knight is definitely terrible. Our knight can come back and pressure the pawn. Maybe the game might end like this, or he doesn't have to go knight b6. He can also just play like a chill move. A chill waiting move. But I mean, if you play a slow move like f6, then Bach gets what he wants. He puts his knight on c5, where after the capture, you could take back with the rook and then double stack and go for this queenside expansion. So, I feel like if you don't play knight b6, then, I mean, you're just going knight c5. Okay, Noterbeck went queen b3. So he didn't opt for any weakening of the position with f3. Queen b3 a bit more solid and to the point. Let's say rook a to b8, just defend. How do you improve the position? Maybe knight f1 and then knight h2. The bishop can go here though. Chess is hard. The only thing about like queen b3 is after rook b8, what the queen is actually doing on b3. Because it doesn't let the b pawn advance. Let's back out of this game. If you guys have any suggestion on a game I should check out, but it seems like every game in every section is relatively level, which is a bit unfortunate. Hey guys, whoa, we have a 0.8 advantage. Let's freak out. Let's go crazy. It's like the biggest advantage we have today. So he goes queen g4 and just blunders the d6 pawn because after takes, you can grab the e pawn, attacking the rook. Yeah, so he counterattacks the e pawn. So rook takes d6, take, knight takes e4, h3. You maintain the defense here. So yeah, let's see, takes, knight takes e4, h3. That you have to stay defending. I guess there's like queen f5. Walks into knight here. If you go queen f4, that allows the rook to go to d7 and pressure this. Okay, Yakuboy, we see a6. But this isn't a threat because if you take, the rook is hanging. So you can castle, but then they go rook b8, and then you're sort of forced to take. I guess with the bishop. Okay, so we see knight f1. Yeah, so what I expected happened here. I feel like Magnus. Now rook b8, just defend, knight f1. The knight can go to h2, but I mean, if you go knight f4 and they take, or I mean, knight f4 and they take, pawn takes, hits the rook. Engine is pointing out knight f4. Maybe he'll play it. Okay, we got a... Okay, so he goes knight b6. So this is actually going into the line. Engine says this is a mistake, but it's sort of the only move that prevented knight to c5. So I guess this is a lot of what Bach was calculating. That after knight c5 check knight c4, you can play this goofy move king c3, but follow it up with b3. Yeah, knight b6, I mean, is what I was expecting. You definitely don't want to take. There is this weird move b3 where you allow the double of the pawns, but it looks less good here because you went rook a c8. If you went rook h, then the rook could be on c1, the other rook could be on b1. But now it looks like you wasted a tempo going rook b8 and then rook c8. So I think Bach was calculating knight c5, knight c4, and I think king c3. I mean, you have to go to c3 to defend the b2 pawn. b6 here, here, b3, knight here. And they probably get to this position where yeah, I think this is what's going to happen in the game. It seems relatively, yeah, I predict this will happen, and I guess Bach's knight is better placed because it can come back to b4, where this knight sort of has to go back to b7 and you don't have control over d6. But yeah, we'll move the king back to d2. And now we baited him. We see the relative difference between b6 and b3. We have the open c-file to pressure the weak c6 pawn that's been created. And he doesn't really have... I mean, the b3 pawn, this structure isn't really a weakness. So yeah, I mean, Bach does seem like he's in the driver's seat there. If you don't go knight c5, then I mean, I don't think the whole plan makes much sense. Unless you go b3. But then that was also a waste of a tempo since you should have went rook hc1. Okay. We don't see knight f4 by Gukesh. I don't know why the engine pointed out knight f4. It's a pretty dank line. Let's actually look at it now that he didn't play. Knight f4 if you take. E takes f4 hits the rook. Let's say the rook just moves. Queen g6 threatens to like checkmate. King h2 gets out of the way. And I guess it's a fork and you take here. This is not obvious at all. What? And then you go queen e7 and hit this pawn. This is some crazy engine line. Rook h3. Okay, that's an insane engine line. I do not blame Gukesh for not doing that. You also don't even have to take the knight. You can just go knight h2. That is pretty dank though. E takes f4 here. Queen g6. Yeah, and this is essentially forced. So that would have been interesting. Let's refresh to the original though. Is Bach paying me for this? Yeah, we're not going to get into the disclosure on all that. But yeah, I'm just doing this for Bach. He's a friend. All right, let's go knight e7. It's definitely a move you want to see as Noterbeck though, because now the weaknesses you sort of made on the king side don't look as impressive. Or I mean, he can't really punish him, but okay, I mean, knight back to e7 makes sense because the knight sort of did its duty. It's no longer, unless you're planning on sacking or doing some sort of sacrifice on f4 h4, the knight's misplaced. And that engine line with knight f4 and pawn takes was probably a little bit too much. I mean, now with the knight on f1, I feel like knight h2 is sort of the obvious follow-up to chase that bishop out of that square. And if you go here, that might just blunder g4. He has bishop takes, rook g3. I mean, yeah, h3 looks like a bad square. Knight h2, the bishop drops back. Seems like Noterbeck's position has improved. All of Black's pieces are retreating. And all of a sudden, this rook on e3 seems like relatively impressive. Once the pawns start pushing up, and maybe you can go rook g3. Okay, Bach played knight c5, yeah, so that move was obvious. And now you essentially have to go knight c4 here as Black, or else we just play the move pawn to b3. Also, the pawn's just hanging on b7, so you have to deal with that as well. But yeah, knight c4, king c3, b3. I think this will all happen on the board. Yep, knight c4. I mean, you could go king e2, but because both b pawns are hanging. But yeah, as Jordan pointed out, you can't really go rook b1 because they're covering that square and use the b file, which is a good point. So, I mean, king c3 is a goofy looking move, but I mean, if you play b3 and go back, it really should just be fine. And I mean, yeah, Baka has one of the best positions out of anyone in this whole round, master or challenger. Assuming he plays king c3, b3, it seems like he's in the driver's seat. Yep, king c3, great move by Bach. now knight d5. I think you mean a different square. Or you mean like knight a5 maybe? But yeah, knight d5 is covered by a pawn. Yeah, knight a5. Yeah, knight a5 maybe. But knight a5 just... Okay, knight a5 defends the b7 pawn. I expect more b6 here. But b6 is a big concession because now the c6 pawn is going to be a target. If you go knight a5, you're desperately holding on to the pawn, but the knight is just really bad on the square. There's just no movement. We'll probably go b3 anyway, so the knight can't go back to c4. And yeah, I mean, box position is clearly better. The knight is just super clumsy here. So I think b6, knight a... I mean, even that looks good. So I'm liking box position. I think he has actually good chances here to fight. And a win here, 4.5 out of 6. Especially that the other games are looking relatively level. We'll go back to that Gukesh game, but now I'm getting kind of interested. Who's leading? It's Erwin. Oh, and the two top seeds are playing, actually. So 1 and 2 are playing. Ideally, that ends in a draw, but this is potentially pretty good for Bach. The two spiciest games here are this game of the leaders and Bach. So this is actually getting pretty interesting. Here, I feel like rook takes d6, knight takes e4, h3, queen f4. After a trade here, yeah, takes, queen f4, and then rook d7, and you're infiltrating on the 7th rank. Looks good for white. That would be ideal. So if Erwin, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. These Dutch names are always hard to say. That'd be really good for Bach if he lost and then both were at 4.5 out of 6. It'd be crushing. Let's go back to this Noterbeck game though. My goat Noterbeck. Actually, some stuff happened here. So we see knight h2. That was an easy move. Follow up of knight f1. Bishop d7. All of black's pieces retreating. Bishop e2. Chasing the queen away. Makes sense. Queen g6. And now Noterbeck decides it's time to take. And then I guess his follow-up would be just bring the rook to the d file. Okay, he does that. Tempoing the bishop. And I guess Noterbeck is just mobilizing along. Oh, very impressed with Noterbeck's play here. Winning this tempo on the bishop. It has to get defended, and now the rooks can immediately double on the only open file. So I don't know about y'all, but I'm a big Noterbeck fan, so I'm 100% rooting for Noterbeck here. And I like how he's played this. His position's clearly improved. I guess you have to wait with some rook d3 though because of this pawn, but in the long run. Also, this e5 pawn is not super easy for black to defend because you don't want to weaken the light square diagonal. Like bishop e6, this pawn's hard to defend. Queen b5, I guess you have knight c6. Put the knight on c6 is on a terrible square because all it does is defend the pawn and there's no forward movement other than that. I mean, bishop e6 here is the obvious move. Yeah, I think... Yeah, white has a small initiative here. Bishop e6 hits the queen. Queen b5 hits the pawn. And if you're provoked... I guess you could go f6 because now the bishop is monitoring this diagonal, though. So I guess this is how the game will go. Bishop e6, queen b5 hits the pawn. You don't want to go knight c6, because then the knight's terrible. So you go f6. But then you go bishop c4, and you try to trade off the light squared bishop, and then the diagonal's weak. So something like, to put the moves on the board, bishop e6, queen b5, knight c6 is just bad because the pawn on c3 controls its forward movement, so f6. And now you could try bishop to c4 attacking the bishop, maybe queen f7, takes. And now that the queen is no longer attacking this e4 pawn, we've distracted it away. Now we can mobilize and control the open d file. And you can't contest with rook d8. And white should have a solid advantage. When you control the only open file, you should always be in the driver's seat. Yeah, I'm surprised the engine only says it's 0.6. This would be excellent. And then the knight, I guess the knight can't really get into the game, but this sequence makes a lot of sense. But let's go Noti gang. Okay, Bach is down over 30 minutes, but his position is good. Noterbeck owning Gukesh here, though. The engine also points out bishop to c8, but I mean, come on. Bishop c8 looks ridiculous. Disconnecting the rooks, trapping the rook on b8. Bishop e6 is just more obvious, but this is such an easy line. Yeah, bishop e6. It's the queen, queen b5 hits the pawn. There's also this idea of queen b4 hits the knight, knight c6, and then you go queen c5, but that looks stupid. I feel like queen b5 makes the most amount of sense here. And maybe after queen b5, instead of going into this f6, bishop c4, queen f7, takes, and then he gets the open e-file, maybe Gukesh will just admit his bad knight and go knight c6, but that looks not super impressive. You just, because he went knight c6, knight e7, knight g6, and then he goes back knight e7, knight c6, and didn't push any of the pawns, so that would just be goofy. The knight would just be dancing around the same squares. I'm really liking Bach's chances here, though. I think he's this early knight a4 move. Very impressive by Bach, actually, I think. His only advantage, really, was that he had the first move advantage with white. And the C file is better than the E file, and I think he's exploited both very, very well. see. You know me from TikTok? Oh, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, for those of you guys that are not familiar, if you guys do use TikTok, we do make a lot of videos. Sometimes the games are like my highlights for my stream or my games, but in general they are me narrating very interesting attacking chess that we see in these top events and also historical games. We try to make it both entertaining and some smooth commentary. So if you guys want to check that out. But yeah, I appreciate that. That's how Bach learned us. He's a fan of the TikToks, even though he's much stronger, which is obvious. But yeah. Go ahead and check on the leaders of the challengers as well. Okay, so it looks like this forcing line happened on the board. Rook takes d6, knight takes e4, and now h3 looks natural here to try to chase the queen away from the defense of the knight. And if you chase him away from guarding d7, then this initiative looks uncomfortable for black. Like h3, you could go queen f5 to defend this. Okay, maybe they'll just go queen f5, and now I guess you can go rook b6 though, and hit the pawn like this. I mean, there's knight c5, but but then that also blunders this pawn. Like, why can't I take? I guess because this pawn, like if I take, I guess, what am I missing here? If I take, oh, rook e8 pins you. Yeah, so if you take, there's a pin, and if you take with the queen, there's queen takes c2. So, yeah, this game's a bit messy. It's hard to know what's going on, but clearly after h3, black's pieces look tangled together. And h3 looks critical. Obviously, the rook is hanging here. So you could go rook b6 first, but h3 with this counterattack looks better. I guess Noterbeck is picking between queen b5 and queen b4. Okay, it's good that he's in the tank here, his opponent, because they have to even up on time at some point. I think he's realizing that he's worse though, because b6, the knight on a6 makes sense, because b6, knight a6, not to mention there's also just a fork on c7 as well. So that's another tempo that you have to worry about, and basically, if you don't play b6 here, Bach's next move is going to be b3. chase the knight away, just has clear control over the queen side. Okay. If you guys have another game we should look at, let me know. Mainly toggling between these two and then the leaders of the challengers. The other games look relatively dry. How's Faustino doing? My young buck. This game looks like it could become pretty interesting. Faustino's definitely weakened the king. His pieces look relatively menacing. I think Faustino will probably find a way to win this game. He needs to. Both players. Divya is also very strong. But I kind of got to root for Faustino here. Oh, we got to check Miaoyi Lu, the future female world champion. Not that many moves have happened here, though, Rook. D8. I'm getting very impressed by Miaoyi Lu because all of her games are very sharp, brilliant attacking games with the white and black pieces. But here she's playing a Berlin, like a very standard Berlin, like you would have seen in the Kramnik versus Kasparov World Championships. And she's playing it at a 99.5, playing it like perfectly so far. Shows how strong she is, that she isn't just one-dimensional as like an attacking chess player. She's playing some good technical chess as well. And also the bishop pair, I mean, her position looks fantastic. Yeah, she's goated. I'll put this back on Masters. Okay, and yeah, so I had a feeling. Yeah, so queen b5 on the board, and instead of going into this line with f6 and then bishop c4, queen f7, takes, and then we can mobilize and control the open d file. That looked miserable for black. So Gukesh makes the more practical decision of going knight c6, defending the pawn. However, other than defending this pawn, the knight is controlled by this pawn on c3, so it's not really the square you wanted. the knight to be on. And like we said before, this knight was originally on c6, went knight e7, knight g6, and then just went back knight e7, knight c6. So in general, that's not how you want to play chess. So I mean, Noterbeck's looking good here, but at the very least, he doesn't have full control over the e file because you can't go rook d3. You blunder the pawn here. Still no move by Bach's opponent, though, which is a good sign. Yeah, so there's this move h5 for Noterbeck to try to chase the queen away so you can go rook d3. But the move probably most likely, I mean, you could throw this move in and then play a6, but the move a6 just looks super tempting. Because obviously you can't take, you lose the knight, and now you're just softening up the queen side, and this pawn on a6 could be an asset because it's nicely defended by the bishop on e2, so it's not really a weakness. And after a6, it's not clear what to do. You're threatening to take and win the knight, so you probably have to play bishop c8. But after a6, bishop c8, you disconnected the rooks. Looks not like the dream. So a6 looks pretty obvious. I think there's finally been some moves. Yeah, so this is what we expected was going to happen like a while ago, like 20 minutes ago. King c3, b6. Because if you don't go b6, we're going to play b3, no matter what you do. b6, knight a6, threatening the fork here. So we'll see one of the rooks. Not sure, I guess, actually don't know which rook. Let's say rook a to c8, get out of the fork, and defend the newly created weakness on c6, rook a c8. We'll definitely go b3. The knight will go to a5. And Bach just looks better because the knight on a6 on the side of the board is posing a lot more pressure than the knight on a5, which is only has one available square, which is knight b7, and you don't even have an effective reroute with knight d6 because the dark squared bishop covers that. So just based on the better placement of the knight combined with the pressure along the c file, I think Bach has great chances. I guess you don't have to go rook c8, you can go rook d8, but it just makes sense to make sure the c6 pawn's defended in the future. However, I guess when you go b3, knight a5, the one thing that the knight is doing on a5 is defending the pawn. So I guess you have more than one option with rook a8. But I mean, rook d8, you're just staring at your own pawn. So I don't know. Yeah, rook c8. I imagine Bach won't need to think. You just go b3. I feel like this move can be played immediately. b3, the knight goes back, and you probably just go back, king d2. Put the king back on the square you wanted it to be, open up the c file. But after king d2, now you have to play a game of chess. Because your pieces are a bit better, but the knight on a5 defends the pawn, so you have to come up with some sort of plan. I guess the knight can always come back here. All right, come on, Bach. Let's play b3. Let's not get into a time scramble. We know b3, king d2. This is like pre-movable. It's going to be a draw. I mean, obviously there's some chance for a draw, but I think, nah, white's clearly better for the reasons we already described. But if you can actually convert being better into a win, that's a different question. That's why Bach, you don't just win by having a small advantage, which is why chess is not fun sometimes. Yeah, I'm honestly surprised he hasn't blitzed out b3. I mean, it's not like you can play b3 at any moment, but in terms of calculating, since I'm not a good calculator, I like getting the moves on the board first. And I would calculate after b3, knight a5, king d2 is when I would start thinking. But if you can visualize like 20 moves ahead, then I guess it doesn't matter. But we do want to even up the clock a bit. Okay, some stuff happened in the top board here. Yeah, we see h3, we see queen f4. Okay, he goes g3. He didn't go rook d7. Okay, but this also makes sense. Because after the trade, there's still rook d7. But I guess here there's rook c8. Okay, this is actually going to be a draw. If he went rook d7 here, I guess he just didn't want to deal with the headache, but now it looks like a forced draw. Because you go rook d7, they go rook c8. I guess you could go c4. But then he has knight c5, and that's a fork. So you can't go c4. That's bad. And if you go rook c8 and you can't push the pawn to defend, you would have to go knight d2, counterattacking the knight. And after a trade, get this position, and this you just shake hands. This is just a draw. So this might immediately go into a draw now. Unless you don't go rook d7, but I mean... No, yeah, this has to be a draw. Rook d7, rook c8. If c4 doesn't work, then this is forced. Is there another move other than knight d2? I mean, you could take, but that doesn't make any sense. So knight d2... I guess you could go knight c5 and decline as black. Okay, maybe black's playing for the win now. You don't go here because of king f8. So you go here. It's still probably a draw, but I guess black is, I don't know. It's unfortunate though, because yeah, that will. But a draw in this one isn't bad. No, a draw here would also be good. So if this goes into a draw, they're at 4.5. The leader's at 4.5, and if Bach wins, then he's tied for first. So that's probably good. Okay, this is also heating up a bit. Let's go back to Noterbeck. Okay, yeah, so I did expect a6 on the board. This looks very difficult for black to deal with. They have to go bishop c8, but now the rooks aren't connected. Engine seems to say it's only +6. I mean, plus 0.6. Okay, it's going up plus 0.8. But Noterbeck's clearly outplayed Gukesh here in this early middle game. But what the next move is here, I don't know. I guess you go h5, chase the queen away from defending the pawn, and then you just go rook d3 and control the open file. Yeah, very positional play, throwing in a6, h5, big space advantage, control over the only open file. If very difficult to defend. Come on, Bach, bro. Let's play b3, big guy. You can't get the low taper fade and not play b3. Alright, I do not like how Bach's getting low on the time, man. Let's go. He hasn't really, maybe it's a good thing. He hasn't really played any move, like, instantly. That isn't a recapture. Maybe I can learn something from him. Okay, finally he plays b3. Okay, b3 walks away from the table. So let's put these moves on the board here. We actually already have this on the board. Look at me predicting moves, man. Yeah, so we already have this. King d2, knight a5, king d2. I mean, Okay, f6 makes sense. It's at this point it's hard for black to even make a move because at this point all of the pieces are sort of already on their good square. We baited you into creating a weakness. I feel like white's plan is just rook c3, rook c1. So I guess f6 is just a move. Just makes some sense. Gives the king a way to enter the game. So rook c3. The engine's not pointing out rook c3, but this is the most human move to me. Just go like rook c3. In a blitz game, I would just play rook c3, rook c1. Very, very chill. Okay, but it does seem to like rook c3. I mean, this does not look easy. So I guess bishop f5 makes sense. So you can eventually defend this weakness with bishop to d7. Let's say rook h to c1. Let's say king here. Let's say you go knight a5. This is how I would play the position. You created a weakness, you double up. The knight currently defends it, but you go knight a5. You defend bishop to d7. And yeah, if I was playing blitz or bullet, this is, I think, how I mean, this is the most obvious plan for black. Just pressure the weakness. But he defends. And you have all of the pressure, but it's defended. So, like, what do you actually do here to win the game? Okay, one idea is f3 to eventually break in the center. That comes with its own risk. Chess is hard, man. You defend. It's like, bro, what do I do? I expect this to happen eventually, though. He goes knight a5. And yeah, someone needs to tell me how to play chess, because after these moves are played, which seem relatively natural, I don't know what to do. I imagine we see king d2. Oh no, that was a different game. That was this game. So this was also predicted in the Noterbeck game. Go h5. Chase the queen away from defending the pawn. So now you can play rook to d3. Computer says first play rook f3, tickle the queen, and then go rook d3. Wouldn't be surprised if Noterbeck did that. Why is rook d3 right away bad? Because of, wait, what? Because of this. Okay, that makes sense. So rook f3 first, queen e7, now rook d3. Oh, okay. It's a very subtle move order by the computer. Yeah, so I guess black does have this threat of b takes a6. Because the knight defends the rook. But rook f3, if you throw this in, there's a rook takes f6 followed by rook takes here. So you chase the queen away. And only now do you play rook d3 because now the knight no longer has a defender. So I think Noterbeck will be able to come up with that. And at that point, Noterbeck's position looks very good. With the space, the control over the d-file. So I think he will play rook f3. Is there another move, though, after rook f3 instead of queen e7? So he goes rook f3, not surprised. I mean, you could play queen to e6 to maintain the defense of the knight, but that walks into a tempo move, bishop to c4. Yeah. So the only way to maintain the defense, bishop here, but then bishop c4. So you're forced away, queen e7, or a different move, like queen g5. And now rook d3, you can't take the knight. Okay, very strong chess, man. Some high-level stuff. I mean, Noterbeck, I think, has played a brilliant game so far. If we watch this from the start. He gets this space advantage early with a5. c3. He waits for the knight to relinquish control over the center to play c3 and d4. Rook e1. d4. Plays this weird knight h7 move, preparing knight g5. Noterbeck somehow finds rook to e3, a move that is very hard to understand, but I guess it's just a move that doesn't worsen the position, and at some point the rook is going to be useful on the third rank, as we see doubling on the d files what it's going to do now. Knight g5, you take. You go g3, restrict the knight's forward movement. Bishop g4, you have a weakness on the light squares. He finds the counter attack h4, hitting black's queen, queen h5. And now you could go queen e1, you could go f3, but these are weaknesses. Instead, we go queen b3, tempoing the pawn. You simply defend rook b8. But now knight f1, you need to find a place for this knight to go. You want knight h2 to chase this bishop controlling the light squares away. Gukesh, he had this opportunity to play some engine line knight f4, and if you take, then there's some crazy attack with all the pawns hanging. So his knight has no forward movement, so he retreats back knight e7. But now we go knight h2, threatened to win the light squared bishop. The bishop retreats. We win another tempo, bishop e2, chasing the queen away. The queen has not that many squares. Queen g6. And only now that all of the pieces have been chased away does Noterbeck decide to open up the center. Because after the pawn takes back, the bishop is now vulnerable here on d7. And he can play rook to d1 with a tempo. And now he has to react to this. So we see bishop to e6 attacking the queen. But now queen b5 hits the pawn. And we said that if you play a move like f6, then there's bishop to e6. And after queen f7 and some trades, then the rooks control the open d file. So you have to play the ugly move knight c6, defending the pawn, but the knight is stuck with no forward movement. And now he punishes the move knight c6 with the move a6 to remove the defender of the knight. Bishop to c8, you're forced to defend, because if not, we're going to take. And now black has the threat of b takes a6, hitting the queen. But Noterbeck says, no, I'm going to play h5, chase your queen away from attacking this e4 pawn so my rook can move. We see queen f6 to maintain the defense of the knight. We first play rook f3, attack the queen away, chase it off the sixth rank. And after queen to e7, only now do you control the open file. I mean, this is brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant chess by Noterbeck. I mean, every move makes complete sense. Other than rook e3. But rook e3, the mysterious move, is clearly paying its dividends with rook f3 and immediate doubling on the d file. So, I mean, this is 2800 ELO chess. And let's see. What happened so we finally saw king d2. It does seem Bach played this move in only 2 minutes, but these are the obvious moves. King d2. And now Bach's plan is to go rook c3, rook c1, target this pawn. So the opponent anticipates that, plays bishop f5. And now they want to defend this newly created weakness with bishop d7. And we reached this position in our analysis on Lichess, where we're clearly better. All our pieces are attacking the pawn, but everything is defending it. And now we have to figure out a way to improve the position without creating risk, and I don't know how to do that. Is Gukesh cooked? Maybe. He hasn't made any... He's kept everything defended, but all of Noterbeck's moves have been very surgical, and the space advantage with the better placed pieces. I feel like Noterbeck is in a similar. Noterbeck's in a similar. I mean, it's not similar at all, but Noterbeck and Bach, they both have a clearly better position, but how to actually improve your position after all of the pieces are on its best square is unclear. Like once we get here with Bach, all of the pieces are on its best square. Like literally every piece is doing something useful. And now you have to figure out now what, because everything's defended. And yeah, so he plays rook c3. I'm liking that I'm predicting some moves here. I mean, rook c3, rook c1 is super, super obvious. But once it's defended, bishop d7, chess becomes... Because chess is relatively easy. I won't say easy, but chess makes a lot more sense when you can... when the plan is just put your piece on a more active square. Like rook h to c1, clearly a better square, pressuring the pawn. But once all your pieces are already on its somewhat optimal square, coming up with slow moves that kind of transform your advantage later on is when chess gets very difficult. Because especially at this level. Because you can just improve your pieces, put the pieces on the best squares, and you'll just win a lot of games because the opponent can't defend. But when they're able to defend like these players, it's yeah, chess becomes pretty serious. Yeah, I mean, holy Noti gang going off. Let's see, did this other game, is it going to peter out into a draw? Okay. Up for that. Okay, looks like Divya changed her game around. It looked like she was a bit worse at some point. Like here it looked like White's king looked weak. h6. Knight c6. Wow, what is this? And if you take... Wait, if you take... What? Oh my god. Okay, it looks like Faustino... I did not understand this, but Knight c6, it looks like you can just take this. But if you take... There's the move c4, and the queen is now trapped. Wait. Is it trapped? Yeah, because then you take. Ah, yeah. You can go c4 and you chase the queen away from the defense. Wow, brilliant idea by Divya. Knight c6 with the idea c4. The queen isn't trapped, but you lose the defense of the knight. Of the rook, I mean. Knight c6. Fantastic move. So he gets the queen out of the way so it doesn't get stuck. And I guess you just grab a pawn. Pretty nice stuff by Divya there. Okay. This game also looks pretty interesting. We see h4, g3. We'll probably see a pawn push to h5. It's currently defended. White looks like they're building up an attack in that game. but it doesn't look as relevant. Let's go back to Gukesh. Can Gukesh take the pawn on a6? Well, right now, the problem with taking the pawn on a6 right now, attacking the queen, is that you can play rook takes queen here, and then after the queen is taken here, the knight is undefended on c6. So you can't throw in this danger level move, b takes c6, because you'll lose the you'll lose a piece. But if it didn't lose a piece, it would definitely be what Gukesh, I think, would want to do. But the reason we threw in rook f3 is to chase the queen away from the defense of the knight, so pawn takes a6 is not possible by black anymore. Which is why rook f3 is just a fantastic move. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some water. All I've been drinking is coffee. I'll be back. Okay. Okay, any move with Bach. Oh, wow. He goes rook d1. Okay, what the hell is rook d1? Okay, rook d1 is so my move was rook c1. That made sense to me, but rook d1 is actually the top computer move. So this is interesting to me. I guess Bach is smart though, because rook c1 they defend. You can't make much progress, like we talked about in this line, where we have the rooks doubled up and the knight attacking the pawn, but you can't add another attacker and there's no progress to be made. So instead, we see rook c3. We see, oh, okay, so he played rook d8. Wait, is this right? Bishop f5, now rook d8. And now rook d1. Not sure the point of rook d1. I guess if a pawn ever advances, and now the Danium. Oh, okay. So this is an interesting idea by Black. Black played Rook C to D1, so the bishop can return to C8 and chase this annoying knight out of A6. But then the knight goes here, hits the pawn. Still not clear to me what's going on. So Rook D1. I mean, if you go Bishop C8, we go Knight B4, we hit the pawn. The bishop goes back to B7. It seems like a passive square to me. And maybe the reason the rook is on D1 is that eventually you want to break here. It's hard to say why, but they clearly have some deep idea in mind. It's definitely not a hard position to calculate for them, so I think they're seeing pretty far in advance. But okay, Rook D1. Okay, and Bishop C8 on the board. I like this idea by Black. It seems pretty smart. Okay, now Knight B4. The only move that makes any sense. Instead of Bishop E7, he can go Bishop D7, but that doesn't make sense combined with the Rook on D1. Or on D8 for Black, excuse me. I'm not sure what the actual idea is, though, with box Rook to D1. Because at some point, you need to do something. But this obviously creates your own weaknesses. Alright, but Bach has 15 minutes on the clock. Like, what are we doing, Bach? Maybe the move's already played, but I mean, come on, Bach. Let's go Knight B4, buddy. The only other move is Knight C5, but then your knight's getting like trapped here. So Knight B4 also just hits the pawn. And the knight has excellent reroute back into the position. So let's see. This is on the board. Bishop C8 will go Knight B4. Bishop D7. I mean, you could repeat moves here. If they wanted to repeat moves, this is possible. But why are we doing that? It's saying now go Rook C1, but he went Rook D1. So why didn't you go Rook C1 first? Because that's what I don't understand, Rook D1. Okay, I think we have a move in the Gukesh game. Okay, so he goes Queen E6, maintaining the defense of the knight. But that just walks into Bishop to C4. So what was and Bishop C4 is definitely a better square than E2 at this point in the game. So I'm wondering why Gukesh allowed Bishop to C4 with tempo. Maybe the queen goes to E8 to maintain the defense of the knight, reinforcing this, but doesn't look that impressive. I mean, yeah, Gukesh has definitely been outplayed here so far, but it's not like it's lost or anything. White is just clearly better. White does have the bad piece of the knight on H2, I guess. But once the rook goes to D3, the knight comes to F3. So Queen E7. So what? Weird play by Gukesh. I don't want to say weird like I know what I'm talking about. I'm bad, but he could have went Queen E7 here. But for some reason, he likes the bishop on C4 before going Queen E7. How does this help? Why would Gukesh improve the bishop to C4? I'm not understanding that. Because now after queen e7, it's the same problem. You can't take now because the knight's hanging, so we can just play rook to d3 and successfully control the open d-file. Okay, Bach finally played knight to b4. Why did this take him 5 minutes, though, on knight b4? Yeah, no, actually, come on, Bach. With 15 minutes on the clock, you can't be spending 5 minutes on knight b4. I'm talking like I'm good at chess, but, I mean, you have a good position. You don't want to get under time trouble like this. What about bishop to h4? Well, the problem with bishop h4 hitting the rook is that you just go f6. And f6 is a pretty useful move for black because it gives the king a way to enter the game. I mean, g5 too, but it can get blocked one way or another. The bishop is actually very good on this diagonal. Well, one, it gets hit with g5 or f6, but the bishop slicing through here, not allowing, like, for example, rook d6. Yeah, it's just better here. Hitting the rook, I mean, even the rook could go to d6 there. I'm still needing to understand this rook d1 move, though. What the deep idea is. But maybe he'll just go back rook d to c1, and the tempo doesn't really matter in this position. You're going to say how black's dark squared bishop or white's dark squared bishop is bad because of the lack of targets? Well, it's true it doesn't have a target, but the bishop on h4, but it's still, even though it doesn't have targets, it's still on its best square. Because this isn't a better square. You just go g5 or f6, and now you might as well just go back. Like, if you edited this bishop on a square, there really isn't a square where it's doing anything. Because his pawn chain is mainly on the light squares. So I guess black is considering which way he's going to defend. Yeah. Yeah, the only way rook d1 makes sense is that at some point you move the king and you play f3 e4. But even then, you need some way to defend the e4 pawn. So we'll see. In this game, I mean, rook f to d3 would continue with, yeah, I mean, rook f to d3 would just continue with Noterbeck's plan. It seems like the reason he went rook f3 was to make the knight loose so we can play this move without pawn takes. So this just continues with the plan. We have not been introduced. Yeah, so if you guys are interested in me, my name's my username on Twitch. I know he put host in, but I don't think it's popping up. But we see I just typed in host. My name on Twitch is Christo hahaha. I'm also the same username on TikTok. I have the biggest amount of following on TikTok where I make like commentary videos over attacking chess games, sometimes my own highlights for my stream. But yeah, I've been playing chess for about 4 years, a little over 4 years at this point. And yeah, Bach found me through TikTok. He liked my videos. So if you guys ever use that app, check me out. And also, we stream on chess, mainly doing rapid chess grind. We play some blitz and bullet sometimes. I'm around 2400 on chess.com. In blitz and bullet, around rapid, around 2300. But yeah, I don't have too much experience playing over the board. I only started playing chess in general like about 4 years ago. But I played a bit of over the board when like a year into playing chess when I was around 1500, like rapid on chess.com. But since then, I haven't really played much. So yeah. Did I consider chasing titles? No, not really. I'm already an adult. I'm like 25. I actually just turned 26. Yeah, I recently just turned 26. I'm not, even though it seems possible to get something like National Master, I feel a little bit too old to, I feel like my life wouldn't really change if I became a National Master. That stuff, you're mainly motivated by ego unless you're a kid and you're just going up the ranks. But at this point, trying to be a master, I don't know who I'm trying to prove that I'm a master. I mean, you know, if I had an infinite amount of time, then maybe we do it. But there's too much of an opportunity cost playing all of these over-the-board tournaments. Not to mention the pain of chess. Like, I find chess very painful. You lose over the board, you feel like the world just ended. So you would be allowed in Title Tuesday. That is literally like one of the only upsides that I could see, beating up on some masters. But yeah, it definitely I remember Bach said he thinks I could get National Master, which is definitely nice to see, or nice to hear. It's definitely encouraging, but it's too much time and effort, and if I did hit National Master, I feel like nothing would change. I'm not the type of guy that's trying to flex on people I'm a chess master. I kind of like being 2400 online and leaving it at that. $2,400 blitz 99.9. It's definitely I don't know what percentile. It's definitely 99%. I don't know about, it's probably not 99.99. I mean, we could check. We could check. I'm like 2438 right now. Okay, it is 99.9. Yeah. But I'm definitely more of an expert at blitz and bullet than anything else. I'm not much of a calculator. We mainly play on opening prep and intuitive attacking chess. My style doesn't really fit. Okay, so wait. So enough about me. So Noterbeck plays queen a4. I felt like rook d3 sort of continued with his plan of just controlling the open d file. Queen a4. Probably another good move. What's the idea of queen a4? I mean, it gets out of this, first of all. But it wasn't like this was a threat because now the knight's hanging. So what was queen a... What's the point of queen a4? Okay, I mean, queen a4... What's the idea? Trying to understand queen a4. Let's see, did Bach... Is there a move in Bach's game? No, it's the same thing. Queen a4. The only thing I see that queen a4 does is that you could decide to take now. And now, like, there's no tempo here. Honestly, I mean, I guess you're targeting, if you take, you're putting pressure on the a7 pawn. Yeah, I don't really know. Honestly, rook f to d3 just looks so, like, all his moves led up to playing... All of his moves led up to playing rook f to d3 here. But I'm also, like, reading off a top engine line, but I mean, it did look pretty normal to me to... I mean, if you get both rooks on the open file, usually that bodes well. But queen a4... Yeah, I'm not fully understanding queen a4 other than pressuring a7. Knight d8. So he does take. So I guess this goes along with the point of now that the pawn's weak. Maybe he was predicting knight d8. And now the pawn is weak. But yeah, I am a little, like, literally all his moves were give me the open d file. I'm a little bit I mean, I'm just reading off an engine line, so I mean, is what it is. I mean, this also looks pretty good. Oh, what's up, All Wheezy? What's up, man? How we doing? How's Benjamin doing? Yeah, Bach's doing good. Oh, so finally we see a move in Bach's game. Yeah, Bach is definitely... He's played, like, basically a perfect game so far. After the quick exchanges, we see bishop b7. And now, I mean, the good thing is that his black's knight on the rim, it actually, after bishop b7, there's literally no forward movement. So, I mean, Bach's had an excellent game so far. I was thinking that you double up on the c file and pressure this. But we analyzed that the pawn is always defended by the knight and bishop, so you can't make progress. So Bach went rook d1, which is more of a cryptic move because the d file is closed, but maybe it opens up later. The good thing is that this knight on b4, even though it's nicely pressuring this pawn, it has a nice rerouting square to d3 where it can start... I mean, yeah, knight d3 and then the knight can reroute in the center looks pretty good. So, I mean, this is going to be a slow maneuvering game. My only problem with Bach is that he's been playing pretty slow. Like, on some easy moves like b3 and knight back to b4, I think he took an unnecessary amount of time. But knight d3, okay, he goes f3. This is also a move the computer has been begging Bach to play. So, and this f3 move combines with this rook d1 move of Bach eventually seeing that this d file is going to open up and it's going to be useful. So f3 prepares to eventually make progress. Knight to with pawn to e4. Only when this move is ready. Obviously, pawn to e4 is terrible right now for like 7 reasons. But yeah, Bach's in the driver's seat here. But I would say this is okay. I don't want to say it's a 2-result game where Bach either draws or wins, but because I mean things can turn around when it gets a bit messier. But I mean he's without a doubt better. I mean the knight and bishop are just really bad. But I feel like these are the 2 best games right now. Bach and Nodi game. I'm 600. I'd move the knight to d3. Well, buddy, you got to go on the chess.com rapid ladder right now, bro. You'll start winning some games if you find knight d3. That is definitely one of the right ideas. Knight d3 b4. So I don't love the idea of knight d3 b4 because now you just conceded the c4 square. The whole reason the pawn's on b3 is that it's restricting the knight from going to c4. So if you go b4, you just relinquish control over the square. So right now we like that the knight is absolutely terrible. But, I mean, black is just saying, hey, all my pieces are chilling, everything's defended. White has to be the one that changes the position somehow, and when you change the position, other weaknesses end up being created. We see little Faustino in the background. Dude's like, you could tell he's literally 10, man. Cute little kid. But like 3,100 on chess.com. Yeah, it's unfortunate this host thing isn't working. I don't know why host isn't working, but if you guys want to check me out, I just said yo in the chat. I'm Christo. If you guys want to check out the Twitch or the TikTok. Okay, f6. So Bach, needs to start playing some moves a bit quicker. So one thing to definitely do would be to just sidestep the king somewhere. It's obviously kind of awkwardly placed. Like, I think you run the king here. Like, just go king e2, go king f2. Get out of the line of fire of the rooks. And then figure out what to do after king e2, king f2. And then once the king's on e2, king's on f2, what do you do then, though? It's hard to say. Okay, Noterbeck. So Noterbeck's idea is to take. Rook e3 defends the pawn. Now this pawn is hanging. Although maybe you're like getting trapped with like rook a8. Oh, wow. You're actually getting trapped. If you take, like, are you just trapped? So that's actually a bit dangerous. Okay, I think this queen a4 move by Noterbeck kind of slipped. It feels like black's position is starting to untangle. Like bishop c6 defended by the knight. You have to drop back and defend the pawn. I guess you're putting pressure here, but the knight defends. Seems like black is slowly untangling. Not to mention the bishop is now looking impressive on this diagonal. I really wish Noterbeck just played rook f to d3. Yeah, bishop c6. So some sort of move that defends the pawn from the rook. Queen a2. Uh-oh. I feel like Noterbeck's losing it a bit. Still do not understand queen a4. Come on, Bach. Bach cannot be getting low on time. If he gets low on time, I feel like Bach is going to maybe just pivot and not commit to anything with any pawn breaks, and maybe he just settles for a draw, but it seems unnecessary considering he's played such a nice game. I mean, he's literally played 98.9 accuracy. Okay, knight d3. He does that first. Engine really preferred king e2, king f2, but I mean, knight d3 is such an obvious move. It's 30 seconds added every move. So it's not like Bach's going to get flagged, but I mean, yeah, no, you don't want 7 minutes. And also you get added time on move 40, so it's not like he's going to be playing on increment. Yeah, queen a2 by Noterbeck. I mean, he has pressure here, kind of leaving the knight at bay. And if you go knight e6, then we can just trade and give you doubled pawns. So instead he goes knight b7. And again, you really can't take this because of rook a8 and you're like trapped. Could play a move like queen a6 hitting the knight, but I mean, you could even just go back or defend or hitting the bishop. I guess b4 makes sense, just take space. Or bringing the knight back into the game with knight f3, but the knight, and then maybe knight h4 and knight f5. This is definitely a long-term maneuver. It just feels like black has untangled, especially due to the fact that queen takes a7 is never working here. I'm still don't know what queen a4 was. Okay. h6, now g5. So by pushing these pawns here, Bach's opponent has restricted the knight's forward movement and taken space on the king side. Natural move here would be h4, undermining the chain. Yeah, h4 makes a lot of sense. The thing with h4 though is that if you ever take, they take back like this, and it's not clear how the open h file, like who that actually helps. Okay. So Noterbet goes b4. Definitely a logical move. This also just restricts the knight's forward movement. The pawn on b4, nicely defended by the c3 pawn. The knight, now it can't go here and here. It could go to d6. Knight d6, the bishop drops back. The knight on d6 looks very well placed though, because it defends the f7 pawn. It pressures the center. Wait, knight d6, bishop e3, can you take? I mean, yeah, knight d6 looks very natural. Yeah, so knight d6. If you go bishop e3, can this pawn be captured? Like, I don't see why it's not a free pawn. I mean, you don't have to go bishop e3. You could go bishop d5 and defend the pawn. Feels like our bishop was a bit better. Queen takes d5. All of a sudden, a5. Ooh, that looks nasty. I feel like Gukesh might be coming back here. Bishop takes. Oh, I guess you could take back with the rook. And now double like this. I feel like Gukesh is going to untangle here for sure. Let's see the other games real quick. Okay, Bach did make a move though. Rook back to c2. What's the point of that one? Ugh. Rook c2. We played. There might be c5, d4, and it comes with tempo. I mean, rook c2 is one of the. Rook c2's engine approved. I mean, sure, it lets you coordinate with the rooks at some point. It's not like your king wants to go here. It needs to defend the pawn. I mean, you do want to play king e2, king f2. Because the king is just in the line of fire here. Rook c2. This is the type of chess I'm just... It's too much for me. Rook. I mean, he's definitely calculating a lot of lines, and then he goes back and realizes the rook's better on c2 for some reason. At first glance, it doesn't make as much sense. Okay, bishop e8. I'm wondering if this is him trying to bait Bach into repeating moves. Because now, like, I think this is a borderline draw offer by the opponent. And he's trying to go off the fact that, okay, Bach has 3 minutes, so we definitely have to stay here. But I feel like this is a way for, we might see a draw offer, like knight b4, bishop b7, knight back to d3. If Bach is scared about his low time. Because he's purposely undefending the pawn, saying, hey, like, do you want to go back? But wait, you're winning a tempo though. Knight b4, bishop b7. I mean, I guess not really winning a tempo. But I mean, you get the same position with the knight on b4 instead of d3. Right now, by playing knight d3, he's provoked the moves f6 and g5, which, I mean, you could argue were good moves in and of themselves. But knight b4, bishop b7, only now, and then you can continue with this king e2, king f2 plan. I just don't like why does Bach have 2 minutes? He's played great moves so far, but some moves have felt like he could have played a lot quicker. And he still needs 10 moves to get extra time. I'm pretty sure it's after move 40, and he's only on move 30. So this is getting a little bit sus. I think Bach's like, I don't know. I mean, the 30-minute increment, he'll be fine. And it's not like you can really blunder in this position. It's more that you have to settle for a repetition or something. Bach's locked in, though, with the low taper fade. Sorana's better against Fedoseev. Oh, it looks like this is our biggest advantage out of like any board the entire time. We're definitely going to keep an eye on Bach, though. He has like 1 minute. So let's stay here, but we'll keep this later. I mean, there's definitely a decent chance that we go knight b4 and we just go back. And at least knight b4, bro, it's 45 seconds. I hope this isn't correct. We don't really have, yeah, there's no, you can't really see the clock on the board. Uh-oh, he looks nervous, man. He's looking visibly nervous right now. And he goes for the draw. That's disappointing. But to be honest, I don't know what he was supposed to do. because he was better. There was just no plan. I think. Damn, I didn't know you could just offer a draw like that. Yeah, I really feel like his time usage was. I feel like that was like unnecessary. I mean, I'm saying this as someone that doesn't play over the board, like has no experience, complete armchair. But like some of these moves like could have been made quicker. Like B3, he spent 8 minutes on B3 when the entire point was King C3 B3. Were there any moments where he spent like where did his time go? He spent a lot of time here on this critical moment. I guess that makes sense. But okay, I think your draw is decent because like even in the best case scenario, like this is what we had on our analysis board on Lee Chess. Even in the best case scenario where you have the pressure, the way to make progress isn't actually obvious. And when you're the one defending, it's easy to just make reactionary moves that defend. But when you're the one that needs to come up with a plan on how to progress, it's pretty tough. But, I mean, draw is obviously not bad. I mean, Bach just played a nice game. Probably will head out soon and just go ahead and raid the Chess 24. Let's check this Noterbeg game before we head out, though. B4, knight d6, bishop d5 takes. So I guess he wants to double like this. Fortunately, none of these games have been like crazy exciting. But okay, I appreciate you guys coming out. I think now that Bach's game is over, I think we're gonna call it on this stream. So I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna put yo in the chat if you guys liked my commentary, or you guys want to just check out some different content. If you're on TikTok, you can follow Christo Haha. Also, I stream pretty regularly on Twitch as well. We do a lot of instructive rapid, sometimes blitz and bullet. So appreciate if you guys check me out over there as well. All right, I appreciate you guys. I think we're gonna call it.